lot smaller then. We had about 34 acres, and just a little bit of history, we had about, I think close to about 54 or 55 acres, and about 45 years ago we sold the whole property where the softball field is and everything east of that to try to start the endowment fund and also to pay off a debt that we had. So we were a lot smaller then. So when I came, we were about 34 acres. There was no science building where there is now. We had an old, very old academic center. Parking was a major issue. It was just different. The campus had a different feel to it then.
Well, it had been expanded significantly. Arupe Hall had been built, the new Night Center gym had been built, the Performing Arts Center. So it was much different than when I was a student here or when I first came back as a faculty member. So I'm trying to think of other things that were built, but those were the major facilities at that time.
Well, it was obviously much smaller back then. I wouldn't say it was tired, but it didn't have the infrastructure and the newness that we have now on the campus. I mean, it's really a very good quality campus facility now. So, but it was smaller. It was all boys, so that was a very different dynamic, I'm sure, than it is today. Frankly, it was a little more rambunctious, I think. But also the camaraderie was tight.
When I was a student here, basically this hall was called the freshman-sophomore wing. Schulteis Hall was called the junior-senior wing. So we had those two classroom buildings, and then we had the Smith gym. In those days, we just called it the gym. And then we had the cafeteria, which is about half the size it is now. Then we had that meeting area behind the cafeteria, which is now room 32. That building was still there.
Well, I think the first change that we did is that what you now call Xavier and Ignatius Halls, we called freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Those two halls had not been renovated, and so they were still in the same condition essentially that they were in when I was a student here or when I first came back as a faculty member. And what was interesting is that a number of the teachers who had taught in Arupe Hall had seen the advantages of all the things that were there. So one of the first things we did is we renovated both Xavier and Ignatius Halls. What that really did is it allowed, and I'm sure they've been renovated since, but what that really did is it provided the wiring, the technology that was necessary to educate young people into the 21st century. The other things we did is we renovated this room. We built the Jesuit residence. We built the DeSmet Hall. We renovated Cronin Field and put in a new stadium. Probably the most significant thing, and you'll probably smile when you look at all these buildings, but the thing that I've said that I'm probably as pleased with as anything that we did is put the traffic signal in at White Pine Lane, which allowed students to leave Jesuit's campus in a much more safe manner and allowed students to cross Beaverton Highway in a much more safe manner. So I think in terms of improvements, there were lots of them. But if you ask me what's the one that I look at and smile about, it's probably that silly traffic signal.
Well, when I came here, the school was already in the process of adding a baseball or multi-purpose field where the baseball field is now. When I came, the school decided to expand that by about 20%. So we had to raise the rest of that money, and that was installed, I believe, by January of my first year. And that was designed to be multi-purpose: baseball, freshman and sophomore soccer, adding lacrosse out there perhaps, cross country goes through it, PE uses it. We added the alumni bell tower out in front, which is a really good piece, modeled after the bell tower at Marquette University. And not many students know this, but we actually buried a time capsule when we dedicated that. So I think in 50 years, so in 2055, from that moment when we buried that, the school will open it, and I think people will be very surprised what's in that. We also built the new science building, the Iloriaga Center for Science and Math, and that replaced what had been the academic wing. That was the Derringer Center, and before that, the Derringer Center had been the library. So to do that, we moved the Derringer Center to where the old sciences had been, chemistry and biology. And that new Center for Science and Math is state-of-the-art. It's a LEED certified building. There are a lot of obviously really good parts about that. I think one of the big things we did is adding Valley Plaza. And Valley Plaza has been on the purchase block for probably 20-some years, maybe a little more than that. And I think when I came here, there was talk of adding maybe a third of Valley Plaza. So we had about 5 acres of that property. But over time, we were able to raise about $10 million from donors for that. So we actually bought the whole thing except for the corner where the Jack in the Box is, and that was sold under separate cover about 10 years ago. Did renovation of the library, which was a major change for us as a school, and obviously growth in technology, the security on campus. I never thought when I came here we'd have a security fence around the campus, we'd have an expanded security guard staff, and those are really, I think, helped to guarantee the safety of our faculty, staff, and especially our students.
As far as the facilities are concerned, I think the theater building is really impressive. I've been to a couple plays with my kids, and that's a really impressive facility there. Obviously, some of the locker room and those kind of facilities that they built, I think that was back in the 90s. That was pretty substantial as well. I think I look at Jesuit when I've come here, and I just see a maturity level with the kids that we were not at when I was here. It seemed like we were more goofballs back then relative to the level of maturity that I see kids nowadays and the focus that they have, and I think that's a real sign of progress with the school.
The campus has grown significantly over the years, especially with the addition of the Performing Arts Center and Arupe Hall, which is huge. And a few years ago, they built the new Science and Math building, and they've remodeled all the buildings completely.